You're tuned in to Around the Lens, the internet's only live streaming roundtable discussion podcast, featuring Zach Roberts, Ron Hamilton, Travis Keys, and your host, David J. Murphy. Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 187. I am your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me this week is my guest, Mr. Shawn Miller. Hello, Shawn. Tell the audience about you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Shawn Miller. I am, for the last 4.5, about 5 years, I am the official photographer at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
That's great. That's great. Can you tell people a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I went to school in undergrad for art photography, kind of went into photojournalism, or that's the path I was looking for. Worked at a small town newspaper for a little while. I was Army Public Affairs, so I did a tour in Iraq, and as a photographer and journalist, and got out, went to grad school at Syracuse, and eventually found my way to Washington, D.C., and the Library of Congress had an opening for their official photographer, and I jumped on it, and I've been there since November of 2014.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How did you get selected for the Library of Congress? Was it a pretty robust process of applications and interviews, or they like your work and kind of hire you immediately?
No, it was about an 8-month long process. Wow. I applied. I was working at the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. at the time in their communications office, but I was like a subcontractor for the newspaper chain that published their base paper.
Okay.
And I was looking for federal jobs, and I saw an opening come up. I think it was maybe March or April of 2014, and I saw the position was open. And every federal job, you have to go through USA Jobs, right, which is a pretty lengthy, like in-depth website of entering all your information and uploading your resume, and then you have to go through the first round where their computer make sure that you answered all the questions right and you're fit for it. And then after that, I got an email, I think maybe a couple weeks later, said, "Congratulations, you passed the first round of the computer review," or whatever. And then I didn't hear anything for months. And I think it was August, I figured I just didn't get anything. And I was looking for other jobs, and I got turned down for another job that I applied for and made it to the final round of interviews, and didn't get it. And but the next day, I got a call from the library and said, "Hey, you applied for this job a few months ago. Are you still interested?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." And they said, "Okay, we'll call you." And that was it. And so I think a couple weeks went by again, and it was maybe September, and I went in for an interview. I think I did my phone interview first, and then they brought me in for an in-person interview and portfolio review. And a couple weeks later, they said, "Congratulations, you got the position." So this was mid-October by that point, mid to late October, because I started in November. Right. So it was a very long process, but it was very worth it in the end.
Well, I can tell you from my personal experience being on the other end, the hiring side, there's a reason it's a long process, and it's just the way it is, in terms of the putting in the request for the hire, having the advertisement go out, getting the responses, vetting the responses, going through the process of interviewing people, and thankfully, the government gives you a lot of time to make those decisions. But again, if you're not in a rush, it's a great system. If you're in a rush to hire somebody, then it can be a little counterintuitive, just because it just takes a long time sometimes. But I was actually
there were a lot of applications too.
Right. No, absolutely.
Because government photography positions are pretty rare, so when they come up, there's always a ton of applicants.
Well, I guess we should probably let the audience know how we met. We were at a photography event in DC. I've reported on it on this channel. You can go check it out. If you're a Patreon, I posted on Patreon, but it's also on our YouTube channel. We were at the Focus on the Story 2019 photo conference. We met at one of the events, and I thought it was neat. You mentioned government jobs. The person who was actually hired to be the national photographer for the wildlife system, the job that Ansel Adams had, he was at the event. Did you get to meet him, or do you know him?
I did. I went to he did like a little workshop at the tidal basin. I think it was that Friday or Saturday morning, and we went out. It was supposed to be a sunrise photo shoot, but it was pretty cloudy,
Right.
so we ended up just chatting for a while. So it was cool to meet
Yeah.
him.
No. Absolutely. That's great. Um, did you want that job? Did you apply for that job?
That job came up when I was already at the library,
Mm.
and I looked at it, and I I thought about it for a little bit, but then it wasn't really what I wanted to
Right.
do because it was a lot of large format architecture work. Because I think a lot of people thought it was going to be landscapes because a lot of the photo blogs picked it up and said, this is the job Ansel Adams
Right.
had while he was commissioned by the government. But Jared Ortiz, the guy who got the position, submitted a lot of architecture, which is what he ended up doing a lot of for his first couple months on the job. I think, if I'm correct in what he was talking about, he did a lot of Ellis Island, and it was all like just very intricate, large format work with a lot of lighting setups to light up these dark buildings and do it to the standard that they want for preservation of to get the like all the details of the interiors of these
Right.
buildings. So I think I made the right decision staying where I was. I love my job. It's something very new and different every day. There's always something cool going on at the library.
Yeah, if you've been watching our live stream here, you'll see that I've been looking at different. I've had the Library of Congress website actually opened up here on our new system for the live stream, and it's been going through your automatic scroll of different things. So, like the National Book Festival, you have the new on Flickr Library of Congress Life, just some really
Yep,
interesting
that's
stuff.
the
Summer movies on
new
the
Flickr
lawn.
channel I just started.
What was that?
I just started that Flickr
Oh,
channel
great.
because the library had a Flickr channel before, but it was all the prints and photographs division, like historical photos that are all in the public domain on the Creative
Mm-hmm.
Commons. And I wanted a way to showcase more of the photos that I shoot on a daily
Yeah.
basis at different events at the library so people can find them and see what goes on.
Flickr was recently sort of went through this whole transformation, and they went back from there, sort of giving you a terabyte of space to now it's just like 1,000 pictures or something like that. What do you think about Flickr as a platform? Is it really that relevant in the era of Instagram and everything going on?
I loved Flickr. I was on it for a long time. And I think after Instagram started, I kind of got away from it. But just for me personally, I like Flickr because it's less ephemeral, I guess you'd say, than Instagram, where it's like you scroll, you double tap, you keep scrolling, and you never see it again. Where I think Flickr is a great way to have like albums up there that you can keep going back to, and you don't have to
Sure.
scroll back forever through a
Right.
feed. And um, I'm not sure. I know Flickr went through some different management in the last few years, but I know it used to be a really great community.
Yeah.
Uh, like when I was starting at a newspaper and I needed to learn how to like light different stuff because I shot high school basketball in gymnasiums that were awfully lit, and I was setting up external strobes. So I checked out the Strobist site for a while, and the community on the Flickr site on the Strobist Flickr group was great, and just like giving critiques and advice and just kind of like anything and everything about just like working journalists or anyone else just trying different things. So I would like to spend more time on
Right.
Flickr, and I hope there's still that community there. I haven't been on it as much on my personal side for a while, so I think I think it's a great way to have albums out there, and you can use it as more as like a permanent link rather than just the perpetual scroll of Instagram.
Sure.
Or it's even sometimes you log on to Instagram and you're like, oh, I just saw this picture, but then the algorithm just gets lost and you can't find it
Right.
again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I was actually scrolling through your Flickr page while you were talking, and I noticed that you need some faves and you need some galleries. So there's your. I'll put that
Yeah.
up, put those on your to-do list
Okay.
to make your Flickr gallery.
Yeah, like I said, we just launched, so we're growing.
No worries, no worries. Take your time, no rush. But yeah, so talk to me. What is it like to work at the Library of Congress? Just what's the day to day? What are you assigned to do as a photographer for the Library of Congress? Because we were talking beforehand. Most people kind of have sort of a distant, disconnected view of what the Library of Congress is. They just think, oh, well, that's the place where they store all kinds of old movie clips and sound clips from on wax cylinder, and tell people a little bit like what the Library of Congress really is and what you do for it.
Yeah, so it's I really had no idea until I started there and I learned about what the library actually does. And it is, the world's largest collection of amassed knowledge in any different format, but it's also a very active library, just public events. Like, I'm the only photographer at the library in an official capacity, and I work at the communications office. So pretty much anything and everything that we need covered, like I can be shooting a book talk by an author one day or a concert. You mentioned the National Book Festival that's scrolling on our Library of Congress page. That's coming up at the end of the month. And I run the photography team for that. So there's about 6 or 8 of us that cover the festival for the entire day. And then I do work in our preservation labs. There's a lot of behind the scenes things at the library that people, I don't think would normally think of. Like, we have scientists and chemists working in the basement on just different preservation stuff. Some days I'll be shooting architecture photos. Some days it's portraits of new staff members for our magazine or our newsletter. And I run our Instagram page. Like I said, I run our new Flickr page. I'm the photo editor for our bi-monthly magazine and also shoot photos for our weekly newsletter for staff. So there's always something different going on, and it can be very interesting in what I cover in a day. One day I'm just thinking of in particular, President Macron from France came for a visit. So I was covering his state visit at the library, and then an hour later I was shooting photos of a penguin in the Young Reader Center hanging out with kids. And then in the afternoon, I had a budget hearing with the librarian in the Capitol. So it's a little bit of everything.
And I can probably tell what was the most exciting. That budget hearing probably blew you away, and you've got the best
riveting
images of your career from that, I have to imagine, right?
Yes.
Indeed. No, that's great. I mean, that's every day is something new, right? That's one of the great things about being a photographer is you can shoot something new every day, especially in the photojournalism world. But that's interesting. So you're shooting for the library, lots of events and stuff like that. But you said you're the only photographer for the library. Does the library ever bring on stringers or other folks to support you if it has like a large event or it has multiple events going on?
We do. There have been events where I need someone else. We do hire freelancers now and then, especially if I get a vacation time that I need and we have some big event, we'll hire out. Or there are people across the library, other members on staff who are photographers, maybe not in an official capacity, but they're good photographers, and I have them cover events for me when they can. But they also have full-time jobs, so they can't always cover. So we do occasionally hire out freelancers, but I generally stay pretty busy and manage my schedule that I can try to hit all the big events. But occasionally, like some of the like the librarian's swearing in ceremony was a huge event and we needed multiple photographers. So I was running the main photography, but we also had another assistant photographer helping me out.
Cool. Now, as a member of the staff of the Library of Congress and being part of the, working for the government, your imagery is all automatically fair use, right?
Yes. It's all in the public
Roger.
domain.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, that's the same thing in the military. Everything we shoot is free and open to the public to use. And
Mhm.
what burns me up when I see that is when you've got a stock agency like Alamy or something like that that takes the imagery right off of DividHub and throws it right into their stock archive and charge for it essentially. And it's just it's always kind of
Mhm.
like, oh really, they can do that? That kind of burns me up.
Yeah, I think part of it is just educating people that these resources are available to them, that you can go to Divids or Flickr or wherever, and all these are free to use. You can download and use them however you need. And I like the idea of creating this archive and like archiving the cultural history of the United States that happens at the Library of Congress, and it's freely available to the public to
Right.
use.
Do you said you've done some video work, right, for them? And I
Mhm.
mean, it must be
Yes.
nice when you're kind of putting something together because you've got access to all this public domain stuff that you can use in your products. If you want, I mean, there's probably music that you can get access to and videos, historical videos, photos, and new things come into the public domain all the time. So have you used, I mean, obviously you've got things coming here that you different sort of galleries and whatnot, but have you used public domain stuff for the work you've done?
I have, like I said before, our Princeton Photographs division has millions of photos online, and they're all like they're not all public use. Some of them are public use. You have to assess the right statement, but there are public domain images and music and everything else online that are available to use, and I have dropped some of them in to different video projects that I've been working on.
Awesome, awesome, great. And where do you what kind of is like things coming up in the works that isn't that you can maybe talk about, or what are some things you'd like to do while you're at the library? Any sort of ideas for things you'd like to do while you're there, or might be looking out for in the future?
Um, the launching the Flickr site has been on my radar for the last couple of years. So that was one of the big ones that I've been working toward. Other than that, coming up the National Book Festival, as I mentioned before, is one of our biggest events every year. So I'm looking forward to photographing that. And it's over 100 authors coming
Wow.
in doing presentations. It's free and open to the public all day. It's about 12 hours long in Washington D.C. It's like anyone and everyone can come in and hear your favorite author speak or go down to the expo floor and do fun activities for families and kids. And then it's August is kind of a slow time in
Right.
DC for the government. A lot of people are on
Sure.
vacation. Congress is in recess, so we don't have as many events in August. But starting September, October, we'll be ramping back up with public events. Um, but as far as things that I'm looking to do, like I'm always looking for new stories at the library, just find interesting stories because there's so many things going on. It's such a huge
Sure.
library that I just a big part of my job is just interacting with different staff members in different divisions and finding out what's going on. It's kind of I have my assignments from my office every day,
Right.
but other than that, I'm kind of free to explore and find new stories and find new images at the
No,
library.
that's great.
So I'm always trying to network with different staff members, find out what they have that's interesting going on. And I'm only the second full-time photographer the library's had. They just created the
Oh wow.
position in 2009. So I think people might still be getting used to the idea of we have someone at the library who can provide these photos, and then I give the photos to the divisions that I cover, and then they can use them in their own publicity or even in their own archives for things. So it's just all about building relationships.
No, that's great. And so if you find something perhaps in your searches that you think might make for a good project, you can pitch that to your bosses and say, hey, this is something maybe we could turn into something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially we have a blog series, and we're always looking for interesting stories across the library.
Nice, nice. And does, from an outsider's perspective, like for instance, like let's take my archive of work, right? Let's say I want my photos to be archived at the library forever and ever for posterity. Um, like, will the library take them, or do I have to be somebody?
Um, that's not really my area of expertise. I'm not sure how those decisions are made on what they acquire. We have whole offices that decide what to acquire, or like sometimes people donate their collections. So I'm not sure. That's not really something I can talk to with enough
No
knowledge
worries.
to say one way or another whose collections get taken or whose
Got
don't.
it. Well, the one thing I do know is that your collection of photography that you've shot for the library will be part of the Library of Congress, right?
Yes, it's I'm building the archive there, public events. So
Well, there you
uh,
go. You're going to be immortalized forever in the Library of Congress. Congratulations.
thank you. It's kind of strange to hear it being said out loud sometimes, but it is nice to have some stuff in the permanent collection there.
Well, it's something I think many of us, doing photography professionally think about because it's like, what's our legacy, right? I've got a
Hmm.
bunch of hard drives full of thousands of images. Are anyone going to see them? Are they going to go anywhere? Is anyone going to care
Hmm.
that I existed and created imagery? And I think somebody, again, in your position, or if there's a way to, I would be okay with donating my archive to the library when as sort of something in my will,
Hmm.
because I really don't think it's going to be this treasure trove of long lasting, bountiful income and commerce for my family. They're going to be able to sell my archive for some sort of stock agency or sell the imagery work. I'm but a humble podcaster, and so I don't think I've got that kind of cachet. But again, your work, you're creating great stuff, and it'll be forever archived in the library. So that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about our next topic this evening. We're talking about hustling
Okay.
and hustling in the world of visual journalism. And there's an article here I'm going to pull up from the Petapixel, and it's this kind of what gave me the inspiration for this topic. And it's from an author by the name, I'm guessing it's a pseudonym, Missy Mwack, and she writes about how she wanted to, she read all these books about people who hustle, and they were talking about how they hustled for a period of time. And basically, the point that she made here is that the hustling never ends. You can never stop hustling. You always have to be in sort of a constant state of hustle, especially if you're a freelancer. Maybe when you've got a full-time job on a staff, you can kind of, maybe not hustle, but you still got to hustle in that job to make sure that you're, doing well, you're finding new things, and that you're looking good in front of your bosses. Because like you're in a government job. I know government jobs, you got to be evaluated every year, so you want to make sure you got good
Hmm.
evals. So you got to hustle. And talk to me a little bit about your experience with hustling. I mean, I don't think you could have gotten to where you are without having to do your fair share bit of hustling. So, what do you think of the concept of hustling, and how have you sort of demonstrated that throughout your life and your career?
I I was reading this article, and I think this can be applied to any
Right.
job. Like if you want to get ahead, you just have to hustle. That's just the way of life. Like I
Right.
don't think it's just visual journalists, but yeah, I spent my entire 20s hustling. Like I graduated undergrad in 2007, right before the biggest, recession in
Yeah.
decades. So it was, leaving college at that point and trying to find a job, and I was working freelance, trying to shoot weddings, like trying to do anything I could to make it as a photographer.
Sure.
And eventually I landed this job at a small town newspaper, and I remember there was a big event in town and there was an AP photographer there, and I was just asking her, career advice, and she just looked at me and said, "Go to business school." And I was like, "Well, I can't. This is what I do." And it was good advice because she reminded me that it's all about just hustling to get ahead, especially when you want to be a
Right.
photographer. And there's not that many positions available and a ton of people that want to
Yeah.
do it. So you just have to work hard every day. But like I said, I think that goes for anything. You just have to work really hard to get ahead. And like I enlisted in the military to get job experience and to be a journalist. Well, not really journalist, but a public affairs specialist, photographer,
Corporate
and writer.
communicator, as my buddy Zach would say.
Yes, yes, that's a good way to
We're
put it.
trained in
But
the visual journalism style. We're trained to of course, practice our craft with truth and ethics and everything like that, exactly the same. But of course, the day to day gig is we're working for the military, right? So, you know,
Right, and it's kind of the same thing working for the government. It's like I practice the same photojournalistic ethics when I'm covering stories, but it's for the government. So I don't really consider myself a journalist, but it's in the style of
sure,
photojournalism.
absolutely, it has all the same tenets and
But
ethics and whatnot.
mhm.
But yeah, doing it for the business. So yeah. I mean, you got to hustle. I've hustled, all throughout my life to kind of get where I am, and it's the folks. I sort of equate hustling to, in my personal experience, is just working hard and putting yourself out there and being willing to learn and experience and practice. I think if you're not constantly pushing yourself to learn, constantly pushing yourself to become better than you are, then that's you're not hustling. It's very
Right,
easy.
and that's what.
I was gonna say it's very easy to get complacent. Like in terms of what you do.
Mhm. Absolutely.
But I think if you're constantly looking out, like I'm in a new job, and there's a lot of things I have to learn because it's a completely new sort of element for me. I'm out of my element, so to speak, and it's great because I'm learning so much every day. But it also is, it's a little bit nerve wracking because am I doing the right things? Am I performing up to the best I could be? No, I'm not, because I'm still learning. But I know with time and once I get more comfortable, I will be excelling. And I think that willingness to sort of put yourself in a position where maybe you're not going to excel and be comfortable, but you'll learn something new. You'll be stronger and better for it. I kind of see that as sort of hustling as well.
Yeah, and I think even, getting a staff job, the hustle doesn't stop there. I mean, I have to constantly push myself every day because otherwise, just for me personally, like I might, do the same work every day and still get good reviews, but if I'm not learning, I find my work and myself getting
Right.
stale, and I need to constantly learn and push for something new, because if people start seeing the same level of work, and it's like it might be good, but if you're not pushing it to see, like, show something greater, I think it just, like, it gets stale and you get settled into this comfort zone and you forget, or you don't innovate anymore and push a little further and try to get better. Like I'm really trying right now to get better with
Yeah.
portraiture. It's always been something I was never really my expert area, but I love looking at good portraiture, and I'm like learning about lighting and learning about color in portraits. So it's one of the areas that I'm trying to push into to get better with. Um, and also video, because I'm primarily a still shooter, but video pushes me way out of my comfort zone. So it's been good to work on several long-term projects with video to help me get new skills. And especially, I didn't know anything about Adobe Premiere when I started,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the system they had. So I'm sitting there editing and with YouTube pulled up over on the other side, just like, how do I do this? How do I
Yeah.
do this? That's what's great right now with YouTube and stuff online, is that there's tutorials for everything, and you can just sit there, look through, and watch a video or two, and you're like, oh, that's how I do this effect, or that's how I do this
Yeah.
transition, and finding the right cut points, or even the technical side. And so I'm always trying to hustle to stay on top of my game and you know produce better work.
Yeah. That video meant It's just funny you mentioned the video because I'm also a self-taught videographer. So I know that feeling intensely. And when I got into the Air National Guard, I had to learn how to do video, and I pulled up Adobe Premiere and I just watched tutorials. And then what I did was I created a little video series about myself, something to force me to like edit. And so that was a good experience to give me editing experience because I didn't want to necessarily practice on something that I thought was gonna be representative of where I was working
Hmm.
at. I wanted to kind of get the practice out of the way, so when I actually did work for the company, I was more practice. I knew how to actually use the software, so I used that as sort of a testing ground, and it was fun. And that's why I love video editing
Yeah,
today.
and I went to grad school for photojournalism and multimedia, so I got a lot of the video practice there. But putting it into a daily project at a job was different than a student schedule and working. Even we have a whole multimedia team at the library that shoots video, and so I'm more like the short form storytelling, like the 2 to 3 minute videos instead of the more highly produced like promo videos or covering events the way they do. I've been more on the storytelling side, so it's and it had been a while since I had done it, so I was brushing a little bit of the rust off and like working with new systems.
Right.
But and then just doing it in a professional setting, and it was interesting.
Okay.
But it was interesting what you were saying about doing it for the Guard, because when I was in the military in public affairs, it was very split. You had
Yeah.
the still photographer writer side, and you had the video side, and I was trying to push some multimedia, but back then I don't think the Army really knew what to do with it. They didn't really know how to categorize it, so there wasn't a whole lot going on with that. And I think now there's a whole lot more crossover between the still and video side, pushing more multimedia and short form storytelling, which I think is great. And I'm glad that they're doing it now. And it would have been fun to do a little more when I was in, but I was still so new at it that it wasn't at the level that you see now. Like I've seen some great military photographers and videographers doing some really amazing multimedia work now.
Well, you would love it now because the military has gone, completely 360 from where it was when we were in the military. And basically, they've completely renovated the course for how they teach photo, video, and graphics. It's now all one course. They had the pilot class earlier this year, and I believe they'll be putting new students into the program, I believe this year and next year. And they're going to be running quite a few classes a year because that's going to be the main program. And it's going to be, I think almost 6 months long. Probably don't quote me on that. But they're going to teach you how to do video. They're going to teach you how to do photo. They're going to teach you how to do design. And they'll have follow-on classes for more like advanced subsets of those. But the basics, the basic person who comes out of DINFOS nowadays, that's Defense Information School, will be a well-rounded person who knows how to do all these tasks. And it really makes sense because it's not like the old days where maybe you had a camera if you could afford one. Everyone has a camera in their pocket, and that camera can shoot photo and videos, and you can create artwork with it and with your finger, or I have the Note 9, so I've got the stencil, I got the pen. So yeah, it's really just getting with the times and really taking advantage of the abilities of these young kids.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of really good work with drones. Just the little, not the big military drones, but the smaller like DJI drones, and it's like shooting video with those, and it looks incredible. And it's just, I think it's also, it has to do with the way technology has advanced. Where it's like when I was shooting photos for the military, I had an old like Nikon D300, whereas now like the mirrorless has changed the game, and video and smaller video package. Instead of running around with a giant video camera, you have mobile based video and smaller stuff that just makes it more accessible.
Absolutely. I mean, video is amazing, and it's just an awesome sort of time to be in the world of video because there's just so many things to do with it.
Yeah.
And again, looking at those tutorials, you could be someone who's been doing this for 20 years, and there's always new things out there. And so it's great to have those tutorials out there. Like I'm learning DaVinci. And DaVinci Resolve is an amazing program. I don't know if you've ever edited with it. You probably
I haven't.
So if you've been locked in the world of Premiere, that's fine if it's offered to you by your company. I'm not paying for Premiere out of my pocket, and DaVinci Pro is a great free alternative to Premiere. And I was just watching some videos and what you can do with that program. It's amazing, and they're constantly improving in it and innovating it every year. So if you haven't already downloaded DaVinci Resolve, and this is for the audience, but I highly recommend checking it out. It's free. And you might just find a non-linear editor that you might like better than Premiere. So,
yeah, and I think the next area I really need to push into is After Effects, because there's so much I could do with it with video, but I have no idea how to use After Effects. So that's one of the areas that I want to go into to just up my game a little bit, especially working with video and take it to that next level.
Well, After Effects is a whole other world, so that's going to
Hmm.
be fun for you. And what's great is you're in the library, so you can just go down and get a book on After Effects. After Effects for Dummies. I'm sure they have that in their library.
I could probably look it up.
But speaking of video, and speaking of getting better video, let's talk about a tool that was just announced, and you can probably buy it online right now. It's the DJI Osmo Mobile 3. So, if you've been paying attention to DJI, of course, they're an awesome company. They make all kinds of great gimbals, drones, everything like that. And they've been making the Osmo Mobile for quite a few years now. I've actually got the Osmo Mobile 1, the first one that came out. And I thought about this was it's pretty neat. Might be something I upgrade to eventually. It's not very expensive. It's only $120. And what's neat about this one is actually it folds. So with the older Osmo mobiles, it's kind of a beast to kind of carry around because you need a specific carrying case for it. But with this, with the folding, I think it's much easier to sort of just stow in a backpack or in a large pocket or something like that, and take with you, and it's much more usable. I've been watching some videos online as from some of the technology folks who review this kind of stuff, and they've had pretty good reviews. Some have some issues with it, but for the most part, it's a worthy successor to the Osmo Mobile line. Shawn, what do you think of this gimbal, and have you ever used gimbals in your work?
I've used a DJI Osmo. It was one of the ones that had its own camera. It's like a little ball camera on the end, and you monitored it with the phone. I've used that, and it was really great. Um, I I haven't used gimbals a lot, and I'd like to learn more about them because I was looking at this Osmo Mobile 3, and it looks incredible just for daily use. Just because video on cell phones now is just a great way to just find new branches of creativity for so many people, and I think it's helping make filmmaking more accessible to people who, like we were talking about, previously a few years ago, you would have to have these bigger cameras, and now it's opening up this whole new world to people who might not have the money for that, or they can just go online. They don't have to go to school anymore. Well, like, I'm saying you shouldn't go to school, but like, if you don't have the money to go to school, you just want to teach yourself a new thing and learn how to make videos. I think stuff like this is incredible for young filmmakers to learn on, especially at this price point that it's open to consumers, where it's not like a gimbal for, say, a larger camera like a DSLR or mirrorless, where it's several $100s. It's like for $120, you can get this little mobile gimbal. And from what I've seen, I haven't looked a lot into it, but from what I've seen, it has a lot of just edit in functions within the app where you can do everything natively right on the phone and publish it, which I think is great for just STEM or like teaching some creativity. I think I'd like to check it out more because I just got the little lenses that you can attach to your phone, the moment lenses.
Yeah.
I got a couple of those, and it's fun just to do stuff with mobile, and it's like just making videos, whether it's just with your family or just like if you're shooting like a short art film or whatever. I think it's really cool, and it's a good time to be in video making.
I want to see somebody make art family films, art home movies. The moment lenses, are they any good?
I just got mine, and so far I like it. I haven't done a lot with it to test it versus anything else, but it's a great way if I just want to carry my phone and pack light. I got like an ultra wide lens for the phone, and like I said, the quality on phones is coming up a lot. And if I'm going on vacation, I might just take my little mirrorless camera and my phone instead of packing my whole setup.
You mentioned cameras. What do you shoot with at the library? What's your camera?
Right now, I have a Canon 5D Mark III that I use almost every day. That's the library's camera, and occasionally I'll carry along my own Fuji X100 if I'm going small and light.
That's your mirrorless that you were mentioning?
Yeah, that's my mirrorless, and I'm looking into whenever I get authorized for a new camera system, branching into mirrorless and getting a Fuji X-T3 or a Sony or something mirrorless. especially because there are uh, parts of like events that I shoot where I have to be very quiet, or if there's a lot of media that comes to the library, and if I'm shooting on set, it helps to have a mirrorless camera. Or we do the annual Stradivarius concert with the Stradivarius instruments, and if you shoot an SLR in the middle of a classical music concert, you're just interrupting because it's very conspicuous. So the mirrorless is great, and just like being quiet and a lot lighter in a lot of situations. Like sometimes I just carry my Fuji and I go around, and it's quiet, it's light. I can be a little more inconspicuous at
Sure.
times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that for mirrorless. And that was kind of one of the things when I moved to mirrorless, I didn't really know they could do. When I bought my GH4 back, in 2014 or whenever that came out, I didn't realize you could turn off the shutter. You could shoot silently, and that's been one of the best features of mirrorless cameras that I've ever experienced, and a real game changer, like you said. It's kind of, we're seeing that. We've talked to some folks who shoot in the White House, and they're saying more and more you see, especially White House area photographers who are using the mirrorless, because it's getting to that point where that sort of tipping point, if you will, where there's more mirrorless than standard DSLR shooters, and now when you get to that point, you can kind of sort of shame the DSLR shooters into, yeah, you're making too much noise,
I like watching some of the congressional hearings, the more high-profile ones. You have the whole pit of photographers up front, in front of the like the risers, and just whenever the witness comes in, it's just this cacophony of SLR shutters. Right. But it's fun to pick out, the people who are shooting with, the mirrorless cameras, and I'm starting to see more and more. I think just because they are so much quieter, and you can get away with it, like different situations, like the quiet moments. You can grab a lot of shots that you wouldn't be able to before.
And
and even
I think that would be a great thing for you to pitch to your bosses when it comes time to upgrade your camera gear. You can say, hey, listen, boss, this 5D Mark III is great, beautiful camera, but I think we need to upgrade. If we need to stay in the Canon family, there's always the R series, so you can go mirrorless with the R. Or if you're a little more adventurous, I'd say go with the Lumix, Panasonic. But have you that might be something to think about in a couple of years, or whenever you get a chance to, whenever end of year funds come up. Now's the time.
Yeah.
If you want a new camera, tell you put that in right now with I don't know if it works the same way in the military end of year funds. That's the thing you want to get on the ball for. So get that dream sheet. I'm sure you got some new camera gear.
I've had it. Yeah, I've had the sheet on file for a while. Whenever we get a little extra money, I'm always asking for new gear. The Canon is nice, but I've been using it every day for the last couple of years, and it's getting a little beat up. So I'm hoping for something new soon. But I've got the whole Canon lenses series, so it's be good to have a Canon. I like having the Canon system, but it'd be nice to have a second body that's something smaller and lighter.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend either Panasonic or Sony if if you don't mind completely ditching or getting a Metabones adapter. You can still do that and use the Canon glass. But the EOS R is fine if you have to, but the 4K quality is just not up to snuff. And I think that's a point you can pitch to your bosses with regard. Hey, I'm shooting 1080p here. This is 2019. I need to shoot 4K, right? Because I mean, your Canon camera is also your video camera, right? Or do you have a separate video camera?
Yeah. No, it's the video project I've shot were on the Mark III or the DJI Osmo that I have.
So,
but the DJI shoots 4K, whereas the Canon is 1080.
Right. So I mean, that should be something I would go.
It's tough to shoot video on the Mark III too, because you don't have the like the tilting rear screen. You don't have zebra striping. You don't have focus peaking. So and you don't have like live focusing. So it's tough.
Yeah. So there you go.
It goes back to hustling.
There's all the justification you need to bug your bosses into getting you some new gear. So I wish you the best of luck there, and hope you get some great stuff. All right, well, let's go ahead and close tonight's show. Oh, I mean, is the Osmo Mobile 3 something you would get? I think you're interested in it, but would you actually get something like this? You think you'd add to your collection?
As far as at the library, I
No,
don't know
personally.
because I already have the other Osmo, but personally, I will look into it because I like to, I want to shoot more video, but I'm not going to spend the money to go through, like get more professional grade gear when I'm not shooting that on a daily
Right.
basis. I'm
Yeah.
spending on the personal side, most of my money is spent on film and processing for my landscape
Right.
work. I'm shooting 4x5 and medium format landscapes, so I'm spending a lot of money on film and other stuff.
Yeah.
So, but the video side is something I'm interested in. So I'm looking forward to checking out this Osmo a little more and seeing if I can do more with that.
Cool. Cool. All right. Well, let us know how you like it if you do get it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and close up tonight's show. Shawn, is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience about that they should go check out? Any sort of sites or other stuff that you think is worth checking out?
Yeah, I think if people are interested in learning more about what the library does and what I cover on a daily basis, and you'd like to see more images, you can check out loc.gov, and that'll lead you. We have links to all our social media, so if it's out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Flickr, my photos go kind of everywhere. So check that out, and maybe you'll see something you like,
Okay. Great.
or maybe learn something about the library.
There you go.
And if you're in DC, there's tons of events to come
Yeah.
to, so it's fun.
Yeah, I really hope they do focus on the Story 2020. That'll be a great event. Do you think you'll go back?
Oh, I'll definitely go back if they have it. So I'm looking forward to seeing if they're going to do. They said they were going to do it, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I think it'll be great. I wish I could go. Of course, I'm not going to be flying back from Korea anytime soon, but I'll be there in
Right.
spirit. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'll live vicariously through other people. But it was a great event and great to meet you there. Wishing you the best of luck in everything you do at the library and everything you do for your future. And hope to have you on in a future episode. You're always welcome back, Shawn. So
All right.
love to hear about what you're
Well,
doing.
thanks for having me on, David. I
Yeah,
appreciate
especially
it.
if you got any new projects or something you want to promote, we'd love to have you on and talk about what's going on at the library. Before we sign off, though, I just want to
Absolutely.
remind everybody we got aroundthelens.com is our website. Please go to that and find links to all of our social media, to include our Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, everything like that. If you like the show a lot and you want to contribute to it financially, please go to patreon.com/aroundthelens and throw us a buck or more. We really appreciate it, and it'll give you access to everything we produce ahead of time. So, for instance, I'm working on my review of the long overdue review of the Photocross 15 camera bag, and as soon as I have the time, I'm going to put that together. It's been tough the last few months moving and everything like that, but now that I'm situated, I'm working on it. I should have that out here, I'd say probably another week or so, and you'll get to see that first and foremost on the Patreon page. But it'll eventually go free for everybody else. But again, if you want to support the show, please go ahead and do that. All right, Shawn, thank you again so much for being on the show. Truly appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you, David.
I am David J. Murphy for no one else, just me. This has been Around the Lens, episode 187, and we are out.